Be Dibs and Willard. You want to be Dibs and Willard for today? You can do that. Yeah.
I don't
Go
care.
ahead. Here, take it. Bring us
care.
in. Bring us in.
It's time to talk to the great doctor, Dr. Nirav Pandya, as we get cleared to play. So many medical questions, and we should probably start, though, with your hurt feelings, Mark.
I got no hurt feelings. I think Giants fans' egos got hurt for sure. And we can find out what the time of recovery for that is. Time for Cleared to Play, where we take you inside the tent, get you updated on latest injuries in the Bay. Proud to partner with UCSF Health on this segment and bring in Associate Professor of Orthopedic Surgery, Dr. Nirav Pandya. Yeah, have you ever gotten somebody to come in and be like, Doc, I have no confidence anymore. Can you fix me?
Yeah, I have, sometimes you get people come in and you got to tell them it could just be a chronic problem. It's hard to fix those things. And way the Giants are looking right now, it could be a chronic problem.
Yeah, no joke. But let's definitely get right to the one that I think we're all fascinated to hear from you. And it's this. Can Jimmy Garoppolo play in January?
I think based on what they're reporting, the fact that they ruled out this Frank injury, which would obviously be season and potentially even have long-term implications, it's just a regular kind of run-of-the-mill broken foot, and he's not getting surgery, absolutely. You could definitely potentially see him playing in 6 to 7 weeks, assuming he heals well. He's able to be very active and put pressure on it. So absolutely, you could see him potentially first or second round of the playoffs. Obviously, based on what information they release, him on the field, absolutely.
What would he need to do in terms of being able to come back and avoid the rust? I know just the actual rehab of the bones themselves, but is there flexibility that he can do before the bone heals to get him even more ready?
Yeah, absolutely. Assuming that these injuries and the fact that they're not getting surgery on it probably means that most of these breaks are pretty stable, meaning that you can do more flexibility work. You don't necessarily need to be immobilized. There are things out there now where you can actually simulate running without putting pressure on your foot with these zero-gravity treadmills. So there are lots of things he can do to stay in shape, to stay ready, so that when he's back on the field, he can absolutely not have that drop-off in terms of the physical part of his performance. So, yeah, this sounds like the best-case scenario, and this is one of the few times I've ever seen such a drastic change within 24 hours for an athlete in terms of what their prognosis would be.
You know what also I think would be interesting to note, and this goes for Jimmy and Trey Lance for that matter, because we know this isn't going away. If we're going to keep talking about the idea of either of them returning in January, what if it were like a road game in Philadelphia and it's 22 degrees? How would that affect these guys?
Weather absolutely will. And I think for Jimmy, you're thinking about if he were to come back, you're thinking about pain. Because the number one issue with this, it's going to limit him. It's not necessarily that his foot's going to be unstable or he's going to twist his ankle, in terms of coming back like that. It's how much pain can he tolerate? And we absolutely know that in colder weather, everything is going to be stiffer. It's going to hurt more. So, yeah, absolutely. Where they're playing could potentially play a role. For Trey, if you were theoretically to come back, then you're worried more about the flexibility, the fact of a secondary injury because he's been out for so long. Whereas Jimmy only has 6, 7, 8 weeks in best case scenario of being away and he can do stuff. Trey hasn't really played football, in almost like 3, 4, 5, 6 months at that point. So there you're worried about, is he going to get a hamstring? Is he going to get a quad? So absolutely, where you're playing, the team you're playing against, what their defense is like, are all considerations that go into determining whether an athlete will be cleared to play to return for that game.
Tonight, James Wiseman plays basketball in Utah. Presumably, he's rejoined the team, but Andrew Wiggins won't. He's got a right adductor strain. What exactly is that, Doc?
Yeah, it's the classic groin muscle that is pulled. So it's a fancy way of saying he pulled his groin. And typically with these kind of injuries in NBA players, we think of groin injuries more in soccer players. We obviously think of it with receivers and in football. If you look at NBA players who have adductor injuries, they actually miss 6 to 7 games. So if he's out for an extended period of time, I don't think necessarily the fans should get worried that this is some sort of season-ending injury. But it does take a while to get back, particularly since the adductor muscles are used a lot when you're playing basketball. You're cutting, you're pivoting, etc. The key is that there's about a 20% re-injury rate with this if you come back too early. So number one, it's better to err on the side of him taking additional time off. But good news for him long-term is if you look at these players globally when they have this injury, there's no impact on their long-term performance. So You might have a short-term loss in terms of Wiggins not playing, which can potentially impact the team. But long-term, I'm not super worried about it.
Doc, anything other than garden variety from Steph Curry with what you've read and heard? I mean, it seems like, you got to come up with something if you just want to give a guy a night off. But maybe this is more than that. What do you think?
He did have that kind of like ankle tweak the game before the Pacers game. So there potentially may be a little bit of soreness. I think anytime you want Curry to get a little rest, saying ankle soreness, no one's going to question you about that. But, there may be a little bit of residual soreness where he had that little tweak in the game before, maybe played a lot, obviously played a lot against the Pacers and was having some soreness. And this seems to be a good time to rest, particularly since other players will be out. So there may be something to it, and I think it's better to be safe, particularly since how many minutes he's been playing, just given the depth of the team.
Draymond Green will be out with left hip tightness. He had right hip issues last year. He's also had back issues. How interrelated are these things between the hips and the lower back?
Oh, absolutely related. I think, a lot of times pain in that area can migrate to the hips, and, you develop your core muscle strength, during the rehab process, and part of the core is the muscles that are around the hips. So if there's any degree of soreness in the back, or if it's some sort of compensation, you'll absolutely affect the hips as well, too. So it's not surprising. And one of the things Draymond did talk about a lot during the offseason was a part of the things he did in terms of rehab, and was working on the core, working on the hip area, because these are the areas that are going to get impacted if you're coming off a back injury. So absolutely, I think it's all interrelated for him. And absolutely, and, as he's been playing more intensely, there may be some soreness kind of radiating down to those hips as part of his back issues.
Does James Wiseman play basketball tonight?
He does, but I'm afraid to tweet that out because you can see if you mention James Wiseman on Twitter, I am going to get crucified. Yeah.
Duck. I'm good at the tweet and duck also. So if you need any tips on how to do that, go ahead and let me know. But Doc, thank you so much. Great stuff.
No problem. Take care, guys.
All right.